Hi everyone, I'm Chrissy. Welcome to my new channel, Finding Faith in Fiction. So I'm not new to YouTube, but I am new to the Christian fiction booktuber world. So I wanted to share a Meet the Booktuber tag to talk a little bit about myself and why I am here and what this channel is all about. So a little bit about me. I live in Thailand with my family, and I'm originally from Florida. And I have loved reading for as long as I can remember. As early as I was able to pick up a book and read it, I was reading it. I've read pretty consistently throughout childhood, my preteen years, dwindled a little bit in high school, outside of school reading. And in my early 20s, while I was in college and got into my education major, I started picking up books again. And then that probably continued on and off throughout college. I did some pretty major traveling. So I had my first Kindle and was reading ebooks on there during my travels and plane rides and bus rides and train rides and all the things. But then I got married and shortly after had a baby. And things got crazy in life as they tend to do with children and husbands. And yeah, reading just got put to the side. So I probably went years where I only read a couple of books, which is so different from the rest of my life and who I've always been. Like, reading has always been one of the things I feel like that I have defined myself with. So this year, as one of my goals and things that I wanted to kind of shift and refocus in my life, one of those was reading more. And I created a reading journal and created a 2025 TBR list with 25 books because I honestly thought that is all I would get to this year. Since then, I have read dozens of books and went way over what I thought I was going to read and way outside of the TBR list I made. And I've just enjoyed so much getting into Christian fiction. And so I wanted to bring awareness to these books and offer another space online for people to find Christian fiction. So let's go ahead and jump right into the first question. Question number one, why did you create this channel? I created this channel because I love books and I am a Christian and I love a good Christian fiction book. I do read nonfiction once in a while, but I've always loved fiction. And I love talking about books. I love browsing books. I love everything to do with books. Um, I've been busy with life the past few years and stopped reading and just picked up my Kindle again this year. And since I live overseas and don't have access to hardcover books, I've been just looking for Kindle books. And I came across some new Christian fiction books, and it led me down this rabbit trail of this huge world of Christian fiction that exists now. And you have to understand my knowledge of Christian fiction prior to this year was basically still the books that I had read as a preteen, Francine Rivers, Frank Peretti, Jerry Jenkins, like the classics from the 90s. Those were the ones I grew up with. And so I just haven't followed Christian fiction for many years. Um, and part of my goal this year was to not just read again, but to try to read books that I felt honored my relationship with God. In the past few years, I've picked up some different books here and there, and they just didn't make me feel good to read them. They didn't align with my values. They didn't align with the types of stories I wanted to be reading or what I was exposing myself to. And so that's how I really got into Christian fiction. So since I have dabbled in YouTube over the past couple years, my family has a channel about our life in Thailand. I thought it would be fun to do something on my own, just me, and start a new channel that focuses on my love for books and just help others find as many amazing Christian fiction books and authors as they can. because, like I said, I didn't know all of these great new authors existed until recently. And so I just really want to talk about them and I really want to share them. So I hope you enjoy this channel and this journey along with me as I kind of shift my focus on YouTube into Booktube. Question number 2, why do you love reading? This is a big question. And the simple answer is like, I kind of know, but I also don't know. I think I was just born loving reading. Not really. Um, I love reading because I grew up in a place and in a family where we didn't get to have many adventures. We were a very like middle class family with not a lot of extra funds, to travel and to go to cool places. But I always had this innate desire for adventure and like experiencing other cultures, other places, and just like going beyond this town, this small town that I grew up in. I wouldn't call my town rural, but it was small at the time. And so I think for me, books started off as a way to live other lives, experience other things, have adventures along with the characters in the books. Um, and I also never quite as a child felt like I fit in, both socially, but also just like in culture and in this time of the world. I always just felt out of place. And so from a very young age, I was drawn to books that were historical and accounts of history and realized how much I loved reading stories set in different time periods and different places that just felt right with my soul and like this way of life that I feel like I was meant for and longed for. And I trust God that He put me here in this time for a reason. But I've just always really longed for a different way of life and a different time of life, if that makes sense. And so I discovered those things through books. And in general, I would say I love the written word. I always have since I was little. Whether it was, you know, poring over little boxes of those cards about animal facts as a kid. I don't know if some of you remember that, showing my age here a little bit. But I mean, I would just pour over information, anything in written form, that taught me something I wanted to know. I was just very hungry and eager to learn, always have been. And so, yeah, books were just a natural extension of that for me. But fiction is definitely where I found my home in reading and the stories that I really enjoyed and engaged with the most. I think another reason that I love reading so much is that as humans, it helps us develop empathy for others by putting ourselves in another person, even if that's just a fictional character, in their shoes and walking their journey with them for a little while. And I feel like it opens our mind to so many new perspectives and ways of thinking, and can take us out of our kind of like fixed mindset and get us out of the box a little bit and realize the potential that exists in the world and all the things that exist in the world. And so I really love that reading grows our character if we're reading the right books. I like that, stories contain lessons and morals, and we can explore consequences that are not our own and try not to repeat mistakes in our lives that we see characters making in these stories. So for me, it's also just a way to learn how to live or not live life well. Um, and then lastly, I would say I love reading Christian fiction specifically, um, because it makes me feel less alone in my faith journey. And a lot of times in my life, just based on my circumstances and where I've lived, which has been a lot of like international settings, um, there's been times where I felt spiritually isolated and just didn't have a strong community of other believers around me. And so I think reading stories told about believers and their journey with God, and even some stories that are just retellings of of biblical accounts um, have really helped my faith and helped, wisdom and stories from the Bible to come alive for me in a way that they don't always through reading nonfiction accounts in the Bible. Fiction just kind of makes them so much more relatable to me. And so I really just, I love how God can use a fiction story to teach us something and grow us in our faith. Next question is, what are some fun and unique things you can bring to Booktube? Honestly, I'm not sure yet. I'm just kind of doing this on a whim because I just need something right now for myself that brings me joy. And so that's what this is, and I hope others enjoy it as well. I guess one unique thing about me compared to some of the other booktubers that I've encountered so far is that I'm an educator by trade. And I've been working in education for over 15 years now. I don't remember the exact number of years, but in one way or another, I've been working with kids and in education for a long time, for almost 2 decades. And that has definitely uh, grown and shaped how I view books and story through teaching how to read stories and how to write stories. And it just brings a different lens to me when I'm reading. And sometimes that isn't always a good thing because I can't always enjoy aspects of a story when my teacher brain turns on and I'm like, oof, oh, that's bad grammar right there. Um, but I do think it does make me unique because I do look at stories from that lens and that almost critique angle of like, all right, as a teacher of story and of writing and storytelling, like how can we tell amazing stories? But I do love seeing how different authors and their unique styles come out in stories. And I definitely acknowledge that authors are incredible humans. I've always aspired to finish a story and publish it. I've started many, haven't finished any. And so I have a lot of respect for authors, whether I personally enjoy their story or not. It is hard work. Don't ever think otherwise. Writing a book is hard work, especially one that thousands of people can enjoy. So I highly respect that. And then I guess another thing that is unique about me in terms of BookTube is that I do not live in America right now. I live in Thailand, and a lot of physical copies of books, especially Christian fiction, are not available to me here. Could I order them from Amazon? I could, but between the shipping and the import fees, it doesn't make sense. So I am not physically consuming books. I'm not physically putting my hands on them, feeling the texture of the covers, flipping through pages, which I do love as a book reader. I absolutely love holding a physical book in my hand. But I've had to shift to e-readers and Kindle. If I had access to my own library, I probably would have a big one. But I do also appreciate that my situation is kind of forcing me into um, being more intentional about what books I choose to purchase and get here versus which ones I can get through Kindle Unlimited or ebook copies. I guess another thing that could make me different, and maybe not, there might be other booktubers that I just haven't found. I'm a late 30 something, almost 40-year-old who feels like I'm still in my 20s. I still love a good middle grade and young adult fiction just as much as probably people in those age ranges do. And that might be because I'm an educator. Um, but I'm also at the stage of life where I'm married and have a family now, and some of those early 20 romances, while I still enjoy them, I just don't relate to them the way that I used to. But I also don't relate to some of the stories I've read that just feel like an older woman is writing them and is giving that perspective. So I really appreciate authors who can kind of write to any age women and it feel relatable to them. Not too young, not too old, but can work for everybody. So that is something I've realized that I'm definitely cognizant of right now in reading is I'll pick up a book and it just feels the writing and the storytelling feels young to me or it feels mature to me and just isn't hitting me where I am right now. And again, that's totally okay. That brings in diversity of perspective and character. Um, but yeah, I think I've seen a lot of younger booktubers, maybe a couple my age, but not too many. And so maybe bringing that lens will be helpful to somebody that's also in their middle stage of life as well. All right, the next question. What are you most excited about for this new channel? Okay, this is an easy one. I do not have friends who are big readers, and where I live in Thailand, I don't know anybody who's a big reader out of my friend group here. My husband hates reading. My daughter's just learning to read. She's not reading independently yet. So I do read aloud to her, but I don't have anybody to really connect with over my love of books. My brother enjoys books, but reads very different genres than I do. And my mom and dad, they used to read a lot, but they really don't anymore. And so, yeah, I just feel lonely in wanting to read a book and share what I loved about it with somebody. And so I'm honestly excited to connect with other book lovers and specifically people who are at a place in their faith where they just want to be reading Christian fiction. Not to say I will never read books that are secular or are not Christian, because I will, but other people who understand the reason for being careful about what books they choose. So I'm really excited to find a community here, hopefully, um, and have a chance to talk about books and relate to each other through books and yeah, just connect as a group of believers in Christ. This question is, what questions would you ask your favorite booktuber? I don't know that I have a favorite booktuber. I've been watching a couple. Actually, that's not true. I think I do have a new favorite, and her channel is called Kay's Library. Kay, if you ever see this, hello. Um, I watched her Meet the Christian Booktuber tag video, and there were so many things that she said that I related to so hardcore. And I really felt like I had a lot in common with her and just the way she thinks. So she might be my current favorite, but she's new. She's also kind of new to the Christian fiction scene, but I'm excited to continue watching her videos. Um, so yeah, I guess the question I would want to ask her or just other booktubers who are hitting on Christian fiction are like, what are maybe like a handful of books, like 3 to 5 books that have just like changed you as a reader? They've shaped who you are as a reader, or books that they've read that have so deeply impacted them that when you turn that last page and close the cover, you get that little feeling of depression because you have to say goodbye to the story and the characters. Those are the books that I love, the books that I'm depressed to finish and wish could just keep reading forever and ever. The books that sit with me for days after, and I can't start a new book because I'm still just processing. Um, and yeah, just books who are like so deeply special to you, and those characters just live in your heart as friends. I would love to like hear other recommendations for books like that from other booktubers. What challenges do you think will be the hardest to overcome? I guess because I have done YouTube for a couple years, went through the process of trying to get monetized. I understand how hard it can be to grow your channel. However, for this, I'm doing this more as a passion project than like for an income. It would be great to have another revenue stream for my income. We're a single income family, and I'm the breadwinner here. So that would be amazing. Um, but again, for me, I'm not so worried about how many subscribers I have or how many I get to because I really just want to be part of the Christian fiction book community because I love books so much. And I love great books and great stories. Like, I just want to be connected to that all the time. I guess the other thing that will be hard is just being a mom, being a wife, and working full time. Um, I manage an online international school and it's a lot of work. So I hope that I will have time to keep this going and commit to making this a part of just my day and my week, um, since I'm so excited about it. All right, the next question is, where do you read? I feel like I could get very Dr. Seuss-like here and be like, here, there, everywhere. Um, Literally, I have read everywhere. Historically, I have read anywhere I can, anytime I could. I was literally the kid who would get in trouble because I would hide a book like inside my desk while we were doing math and I was supposed to be paying attention to the teacher. And then when I started homeschooling, I would hide, you know, at all times of the day reading a book when I was supposed to be, going through my US history textbook or science or whatever it was. And then, also the kid who got in trouble for reading too late into the night instead of going to bed at a decent time. Turns out I'm an insomniac, and that's probably why I did that, but I didn't know back then. So I was definitely one of those kids. I would have rather read a book under the trees than played Red Rover, send Ashley right over with my friends at recess. No, thank you. Not my cup of tea. So yeah, anytime I can pick a book over another activity, I probably will. And wherever that happens to be, it's just fine by me. Now as a mom and, heavily into my career, reading time hasn't been as available to me as it was as a child and preteen, but I am being really intentional about carving out that time into my day. And it's not always daily that I read, but at least a couple times a week, picking up a book, even if it's just for 20 minutes before I fall asleep instead of watching Netflix and having a screen in front of me. Although I am reading on a Kindle screen, so does that count as screen free? I don't know. Um, yeah, and sometimes now it looks like my family is watching some show or movie in the living room that I'm just not super interested in. And so I'm sitting next to them, but I'm reading. I'm reading a book while they're doing that. We take a lot of long road trips around Thailand, and so I've been able to read in the car when the road's not too bumpy. Um, and then, yeah, I often read with my daughter. Um, just books, read alouds for her homeschool and things like that. So, in terms of my favorite place to physically read, it would just be somewhere that's cozy and comfortable and quiet, and preferably with some candles lit and a cup of tea. Always a cup of tea with me while I read. So, anywhere that's cozy, comfortable, has a nice ambiance, is relaxing with a cup of tea, it's for me. The next question is, when did you start reading? I think I might have talked about this earlier. I don't really remember at what age I became an independent reader. I have very early memories of learning to read in kindergarten, probably. I would say by first grade, I was a pretty strong reader. Like I was still developing reading skills, but like I was a strong reader for my age. By second grade, I was definitely independently reading a lot of things. Probably things 10-year-olds would be reading. I was probably reading in second grade. I just took to it really fast, and I don't know if it was the way I learned to read or if it was just like a natural skill or DNA. I don't know what it was, but I just picked it up really quick. I actually have this memory of being in second grade at a Christian private school, and there was this Abeka book series that we were reading, and I can't remember what the name of it was. I could probably do a Google search and find it. Um, because I remember it so vividly. And I remember there was this girl with blonde hair and she always had it in a braid. Um, and I remember having to read that in class and like popcorn reading and then being assigned chapters for homework. And I remember my friends complaining about having to read this book for homework. And I was so excited to keep reading. And a lot of times I would go ahead of the class. And then when we were doing group reading in class, I would go ahead. I'll have to find that Abeka book. It was from the 90s. It was about this little girl and her family. I think it took place in America. Again, she had blonde hair. I feel like there was something about a river. I'm gonna have to go find it now. If you know what I'm talking about, will you drop the name of that book in the comments because it's gonna drive me crazy until I look it up. Yeah, so about that time, second grade, I started picking up chapter books. I have to say my mom was amazing. Even when we were in school, she would take us to the library and let us pick out books. And when I tell you I would max out my library card every time we went to the library, I would max out my library card. I had to get a separate one for my mom and brother because I would use up the whole book allowance. Um, so I did read some picture books, but man, let me tell you, I jumped right into chapter books from as early as I can remember. As soon as I discovered the American Girl original historical character book series, that was it for me. And I think between that and some of those like Abeka books at school that were kind of historical fiction, that was it for me. Like I was bought in and sold out on historical fiction, and that has been me since then. So yeah, I spent a lot of time reading and rereading over and over again the Felicity book set, the Addie, the Kirsten, the Samantha, the Molly. I think Josephina came out while I was still relatively young. I owned all of those box sets. Thank you, Mom and Dad. And so, yeah, that's what I read for a long time. So, the American Girl boxed sets are the first ones I remember. Actually, no, that was one for chapter books. I know what books got me hooked on reading. There was this series of like subscription mail books. I have them. I brought them to Thailand with me. There's 26 of them, right? Is that how many letters are in the alphabet? It's an A to Z set. They're called alphabets. And each letter of the alphabet had a character. And they had like a character trait that was like funny about them. So it was like Albert, the absent-minded alligator. And what was the bee's one name? He was a bear. Bradley, the something bear, brave bear. Connie, the cuddly cat. I don't know. Like, and so they would come like once in a while, like every couple of months, a new one of those books would come. And there was something so exciting about waiting for those to come in the mail. And I would ask, as a really young kid, I would ask my mom to read them to me over and over and over again. And even when I could read them myself, I still asked her to read them over and over and over again. And I think before I was a reader, she had read them to me so many times that I had memorized the stories and could say them like along with her, even though I couldn't read it. So technically, that is the first series. I apologize. Then followed by the American Girl books would probably be the next major series that got me into reading. Once I started homeschooling, which was in sixth grade, I think that's when I really started to become like an even more avid reader and choosing a lot more advanced books. I think by sixth grade, I was probably reading at a college level. And so even before sixth grade, probably as early as fourth grade, I was reading books that my parents were buying. So I remember when the Left Behind series came out. If any of you guys remember those, are like the first couple Frank Peretti books, like This Present Darkness, which are intense looking back. Like those are intense books. Um, like I was reading those, and my dad was always annoyed because I would always try to steal his new releases and read them before he did. And so, to try to appease me, he bought the children's version of the Left Behind series, which is like, I don't know, 24 little books. He also brought me like the Cooper Kids, Frank Peretti series, and those were really, really nice and cute. But honestly, like I wanted to read the giant novels. That's what I wanted. And so if my dad was away at work and a new release from one of those authors came in the mail, I would try to sneak it and try to binge read it before he got home. Or realized that it had already come and that I had taken it. Luckily, we didn't have email notifications for orders back then. So yeah, I used to get in trouble for trying to stealing his books. He would take too long. He would take a couple weeks because he was working to read them, and I could get through them much faster. And then my mom had some Francine Rivers laying around the house, and I think I think the first Francine Rivers I read was the Mark of the Lion series. And I couldn't have been more than 11 or 12 years old. And I was reading those, not reading, I was devouring those. Having reread them and owning them as an adult, I think the romance was probably a little bit too mature for me and a little bit inappropriate at the time. But it was the 90s, right? Our parents just didn't think about that stuff as much. So I when I started reading Francine Rivers, I really loved her stuff because it had a lot of the historical elements with the Mark of the Lion series, with the Redeeming Love story, the ancient Rome. Oh, I loved that. So I really connected with her books. Even though I wasn't really ready for romance, I just loved the historical elements of it. Um, what kind of books do you like to read? I think I've made it pretty clear that my favorite genre is absolutely 100% historical fiction. It can have a romance, it doesn't have to have a romance. I don't really care. I don't really care. I would say in my 20s, I especially loved war-related historical fiction. For some reason, as I've gotten older, I've leaned less away from those. They just feel intense to me. I don't know. Um, and there are definitely some time periods that I enjoy more than others. But if historical fiction is well researched and well written, I can usually get into it. And I like trying ones from new periods. And I think there's so many gaps that I still have left to fill from time periods where I'm like, it would be really cool if somebody wrote a historical fiction in this place in this time. Thailand is one of those. Maybe I'll be the one to do it. I don't know. I do enjoy fantasy and the occasional sci-fi, but I am a lot pickier about which of those books I will choose to read um, than I am with historical fiction. And then, of course, like any true American woman who loves a sappy and overly predictable Hallmark movie, I do enjoy a fictional romance, a rom-com. Um, these days, it needs to be clean or Christian specifically for me to read it. Gone are the days where I will pick up 50 Shades of anything. They're not well written, sorry, and they're raunchy, and I'm just not for it anymore. So, if I do pick up a romance that doesn't have some kind of other element, like a historical aspect or a fantasy aspect or sci-fi aspect, if there's a romance in it, it needs to have some kind of like other depth and complexity to the storyline besides just the romance or some unique aspect. Um, I will watch the cheesiest, shallow Hallmark and Great American Family movies, especially during fall and Christmas time, like I will. But for some reason, when I'm reading, I cannot handle like shallow, vapid romance stories. And I know that's so it doesn't make sense, but that's just who I am. I need some grit to it. I need some like really beautiful language. Um, yeah, there's got to be good quality writing for me if I'm going to read that. So, I also really love anything written by Jane Austen. So that includes Regency era, anything as well. A lot of the classics I really enjoy too. Anne of Green Gables and that whole series is a favorite of mine and has been since I was young. Excuse me. And I forgot to mention that earlier from books that I read a lot as a kid. Yeah, so the Anne of Green Gables is another one that I love. I think older books that are written before the 1900s, I genuinely enjoy because of the quality of writing. Um, and I will say there are some really amazing modern day authors who have written books that I really love and think have a beautiful quality of writing for sure. But those older books just really draw me in. And again, I think it has something to do with feeling like I am in the wrong time of the world. That old language, just, I love it. I love it so much. But anytime I find an author who just has that beautiful old style of writing, like I'm an instant fan, and you've made me really happy if you can do that in your books. All right, the last question I'm going to talk about, and this is not actually part of the tag, but it's why Christian fiction. And I saw a few booktubers who do Christian fiction add this question, and I think it's a good point. Um, so yeah, for many years, I think for me, I've just picked up any book that looked interesting. And especially since I moved back to Thailand, a lot of the used bookstores here, where expats have come dropped off, donated, sold their books, they have tended to be those kind of really raunchy steamy, like romance novels with the, shirtless guy with the long hair blowing in the wind. And yeah, like I said, it's not my cup of tea. But I used to read that and like, while I didn't love it, it didn't bother me. Um, and I will never regret reading certain secular books like the Hunger Games series. I will forever love those. Um, the Divergent series, I also really enjoy. Lord of the Rings, like all of those are amazing and they're not specifically Christian. But this year I did kind of just go through some things in my relationship with God where I was convicted of what I was watching and reading, how I was dressing, how I was speaking, like everything. And yeah, it really just weighed heavy on me that I needed to change what I was consuming in all areas of my life. So picking up a really raunchy book with very graphic, love scenes in it just felt like something that I didn't want to do anymore and that God didn't want me to do anymore. And why it took me this long to be convicted, I'll never know. But it just is what it is. And so, I just can't stomach the raunchy books like I used to at this point. Um, and yeah, I'm just being really careful right now about what I watch on Netflix, what movies I watch, what shows I watch, and what books I read. And, I just have been really dwelling on the idea of like the renewing of our mind as a Christian, and basically what comes in is going to come out. And we want the things that we put in to be, pure and righteous and not causing us to sin. And yeah, so specifically, that's why I started picking back up Christian fiction books again and had started looking at some of the old authors that I knew, and then realized that there was this amazing new massive community of Christian fiction that exists now that I've been missing out on for all of these years. And I'm really just so happy to be finding all of these new authors, all of these new stories. Um, Every time I finish one book on my TBR, I add 20 more. But that's an amazing problem to have. I feel like I'll never run out of Christian fiction, and I hope that even more Christian fiction authors, write more books. It makes me really proud, actually, to see so many Christian women dedicating their craft to writing stories that are beautifully written and are God honoring. Um, I think it's easy in our culture to put out what's popular and what's secular for the masses. But I think to hone in on Christian values takes a lot of courage and a lot of guts. And I think it's really amazing. And I have a lot of respect for that. That is it. I know this was a really long video. Thank you so much for watching my Meet the Booktuber tag video. In future videos, I plan to do book reviews on specific books, do some videos on like specific types of books. I have a video coming out shortly on some of the Beauty and the Beast retellings by Christian authors that I've been reading, and also excited to come out with a fall TBR for Christian fiction in the next couple weeks as well. So if that sounds like something you'd enjoy, please feel free to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.